Lesson 27, take 1. In previous lessons, we've discussed the important dichotomy between our ancient brains and our modern society, and how the way that we're wired physically changes our ability to interact with certain environments and the type of habits and behaviors that we generate in those environments. And I want to talk about an incredibly important hidden force that shapes our behavior because of the way our brain is structured and because of the way our modern society is built. And that's feedback. And specifically feedback loops, and how feedback loops feed and influence the behaviors that we have. Let me give you an example. So in my car, when I'm driving on the dashboard, if I'm driving in an economical way, there's this green band of light, and the green band lights up more green and brighter the more economically I drive, and the less economically I drive, when I'm accelerating or stepping on the gas, it starts to fade to white, and so I know, oh, I'm burning more gas at this moment. And this is a feedback loop. It's a simple feedback loop. It gives me instant and immediate attention and feedback on the way that I'm behaving, and I can adjust my behavior accordingly. And that's a hint at the definition of a feedback loop that I really enjoy from a guy named Thomas Getz. Let me read it to you now. So he says, feedback loops provide people with information about their actions in real time, and then give them a chance to change those actions and push them towards better behaviors. Now, there are two types of feedback loops, and I'm going to explain them both now. The first type is a balancing feedback loop, and these feedback loops are incredibly helpful for moderating bad habits, for pulling our wasteful or inattentive actions back into line. So, for example, I mentioned an outlet timer in a previous lesson, right? It's a little device you plug into the outlet. You can set the time that you want it to turn off, so let's say 10 p.m., and if you notice that you're wasting too much time on your computer late at night or TV, then once it gets to 10 p.m., it immediately shuts off the outlet. That's a balancing feedback loop, right? You have this behavior where you tend to just watch TV for too long, and then the feedback loop balances it and pulls it back in line. Another example, I have a friend who wanted to develop better posture, and posture is one of the most annoying habits to build, because you think about it, and then as soon as you start talking to somebody or you do anything else with your life, you immediately forget and your shoulders start slouching and you change your posture again. So what he did was he created a balancing feedback loop by simply taking a little piece of tape, right, and putting it across his shoulder. So he would maintain good posture, put the tape on, and then anytime that he would slouch again, the tape would tug, and he would have a little bit of feedback, a balancing feedback loop that pulled him back into line. So that's the first type of feedback loop, is a balancing feedback loop. The second type of feedback loop is a reinforcing feedback loop. And a reinforcing feedback loop tells you, let's just continue doing what you're already doing. It actually accelerates and builds upon the previous action. A very common example of a reinforcing feedback loop is investments, right? You put your money in, you have $1, and it becomes $1.10 over the next year, and then it becomes $1.21, and then it just continues to accelerate and build upon itself. That compound interest creates exponential growth because the feedback loop is just reinforcing on itself over and over again. Okay, so these are the two types of feedback loops. But either way, the point of a feedback loop is that it gives you some kind of measurement that triggers the next action. And from a practical standpoint, that's all we need to remember when it comes to building better habits. We want some form of measurement of our previous behavior, and then use that measurement to inform our next behavior. So for example, one of my favorite concepts of a feedback loop is what's called the glow cap. And the glow cap is a little cap that goes on top of a prescription medication bottle. And so let's say you're supposed to take your medication at 8 a.m. each morning. Well, it gets to 8 a.m. and you haven't taken your medication yet, so now the glow cap starts to glow a little bit to catch your attention. It's sitting on the kitchen counter or something. If you get to 8:10 and you haven't taken your medication yet, then it starts to pulse a little bit more, right? Trying to be a little more aggressive and capture your attention. If you get to 8:15 and you haven't taken it, it sends you a text message and says, hey, take your medication, right? And so this form of feedback loop is a great way where it's measuring your action. You haven't taken the medication yet, and then it's informing and triggering the next action, either with a light or pulsing or a text message. So let's cover some examples of feedback loops that you can actually build in your everyday life, and we're going to do that in the next lesson. I'll see you there.